What up, everyone? Welcome into the Full Coverage Football Show, episode number 107. We are live here on a beautiful Wednesday night, a kind of unseasonably warm
It's
Wednesday that's
fantastic.
trickling into cold.
It's nice, dude.
We look like we're getting some good weather here in northeastern Ohio, and can't complain about anything. We're back and we're talking football. Drew, though, I'm talking about good weather. Drew's hanging out in the Arctic there, it looks like. Sleeveless. Like, he's not wearing long sleeves. This dude is O-lineman to the core.
I'm built different. I'm built different, man.
You did say that earlier. You did remind me.
I did, just so you know. I want to be aware.
We're here tonight to talk some good football. We got the first college football playoff rankings. Dan Snyder's selling. We got NFL trade deadline. We're going to do some 2-minute rants. We're going to put together DFS lineups. We're going to talk big game this weekend, college football. Big game this weekend. Really big game. And you know what? Let's just get into it. Let's talk college football rankings right off the bat. Tennessee, the number 1 team in the nation, followed by the Ohio State Buckeyes, Georgia at number 3, and Clemson at number 4. Drew, did they get this right?
Yeah, I got no problem with any of it. I mean, Tennessee beat Alabama. That's the best win on anybody's schedule right now. So they're undefeated. They're 1. Listen, we know that this is probably going to flip. Tennessee's going to have to play Georgia this week, who's the 4th-ranked team. That's the thing about the SEC, and then the SEC championship is not going to be easy for them. So, we could be 4 weeks down the road, and Tennessee ends up having 4 losses, or not 4 losses, 2 losses rather.
Yeah.
But right now, there's not an argument you can make to put Ohio State above them, in my opinion, at least.
No, I'm surprised Ohio State's actually above Georgia. Even this is the defending champion, haven't lost a game, and the Buckeyes. You really look at their schedule. Who have they played?
It's just the Big Ten shaking out to be a shit conference is kind of it. Yeah.
And that's why all these people this weekend talking about, oh, what if Michigan loses to Illinois? If Michigan loses to Illinois, that's horrible for everyone. Because when you look at what the SEC can do, the SEC has Bama, who lost to Tennessee. They can face each other if Georgia, let's say Tennessee beats Georgia this weekend. Tennessee makes it to the SEC title game. They face Bama. If Bama beats Tennessee then, and you have a 1-loss Tennessee, a 1-loss Georgia, it can be insane what could happen here. And then you got Clemson sitting there like, hey, we're somehow sitting on the outside here, number 4.
Clemson's got a real game this week, though, don't they?
I believe they do. Damn it, I brought up all this other stuff.
No, I got it pulling up right now. It's all good because I should. So
I got all these notes here, and of course,
okay. So they're in South Bend. And I know Notre Dame hasn't been great, but they've been better lately. They're in South Bend. It's a night game. So that's a tough matchup for them. But it's kind of, doesn't this outside of Tennessee, because Tennessee and for me, dude, I want to see Tennessee win. Because 1, their fans are awesome. And 2, you see those other 3 teams in this top 4 every year.
Every year. 100%.
It's the same teams every year. So for Tennessee to be playing as well as they do, to be how good they are defensively at times, it's just a lot of. They're a fun team to watch, and I don't know who to pick in this one, but I'm definitely rooting for Tennessee to get it done and beat Georgia because hey, you beat Georgia and Bama, that's big boy football right there.
It is, absolutely. And this team, when you look at the offensive numbers they're putting up behind Hendon Hooker, who came into the year with a chance to really make a name for himself and move in the draft. Right now, he's probably looking like a 2nd-round pick, like the next Indianapolis Colts quarterback at this point. But you look at what the kid's done and what this team is doing, and they're putting up numbers that are similar to the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson LSU team. They're putting up unbelievable numbers. They ran through Alabama without issue for most of that game.
They can run it. They can throw it.
They can do a little bit of everything.
Yep.
And last week, they meet up. It's Will Levis against Hendon Hooker. Everyone's talking about that. No one's realizing that Kentucky is not in the same league as Tennessee. And they just said, all right, listen, we're not going to do this today. You're gone. Get out of here. And it was fantastic to see him in the black uniform.
That was a thrashing, my friend.
It was absolutely a thrashing. They made an absolute statement with that game for anyone who thought that was even going to be a close game.
So here's which a lot of people have ranked as your 3rd overall quarterback in the draft, Will Levis. 98 yards, 3 picks.
Hey, remember that a nameless, faceless GM said last week that Will Levis is the number 1 quarterback prospect in this draft. Well, remember that. Now, for those of you who watch the show, you know who my number one guy is, has been, and will be going forward. It's CJ Stroud. Now, Bryce Young can enter the conversation, and I know you're probably bigger on Bryce than I am. But as we talked in our text message the other day, how big Bryce really is could be an issue.
I
Because he's
feel
not
like not to be draft talk and not to cut you off, I apologize. I guess the JMO and Bryce Young thing kind of intrigues me a little bit based off of seeing Waddle and Tua, Burrow and Chase. Maybe those are just they're just such good players that they just fit in great, but maybe there is something to it. But at this point, I don't have like a strong opinion one way or the other. I guess we'll see. I expect the Lions to probably be picking towards the top of the draft, but we'll see.
Looks like they're going to be up there.
Weeks.
And it looks like they might have 2 picks in the top 12. And I know we're going off in draft talk here, but while we're talking draft talk, my thing with Bryce Young, just to get this on the board, is that so many people look at him and expect him to be Kyler based on his size. He's not as fast as Kyler. He's not as athletic as Kyler. If you want a real comp for him based on his size and skills, it's Russell Wilson. And that's not this year's Russell Wilson doing high knees in the goddamn airplane while his teammates are trying to sleep.
Have I sent you the dude on TikTok that updates every touchdown he throws to see how long it takes Russell to get to as many touchdowns as he has bathrooms in his house?
No, I have not seen this, but it sounds fantastic.
So he's got 6 touchdowns and 12 bathrooms. So we got some to get to.
Oh man, Russ, we're gonna get out of Russ talk because that'll send us down a whole rabbit hole because that dude's been driving me crazy. Between him and you know what? We got 2-minute rants coming up. Maybe that's what my rant will be on, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Out of these teams, though, who do you? Let's say pick 2 teams that you think will definitely be in this 4, and the 2 teams you think will be out.
Georgia, Ohio State.
As your 2 teams definitely in.
Yeah, it's easy to flip Clemson and Ohio State, but Ohio State's essentially going to have to win hopefully one big game and they'll be in. So give me Georgia and Ohio State. Love to see Tennessee there. Clemson can kick rocks as far as I'm concerned.
And we're going to talk later about the Georgia-Tennessee game. And this is a bigger game with these rankings coming out this week. Even though Georgia's been the number 1 team with the AP poll, this actually becomes a bigger game for Georgia to win than it does for Tennessee because Tennessee already beat Alabama, so they've got that key win. Now Georgia needs to do the same, even though they did beat Bo Nix's Oregon team to start the season, and Bo Nix did come out and say that if they played again, it'd be a much closer score, but we won't get into that. And Bo Nix is going to trick someone into picking him very early in the draft if he keeps playing the way he is. But that'll be for another show. Let's move off of this subject for a second. Let's talk about NFL trade deadline. Yesterday, 10 trades went down in the NFL trade deadline. This is insane. For the longest time, we had no trades ever happen in the NFL. It was something that if it happened, it's like, wow, there's a trade that happened. What? We never see this anymore. And now they've moved the trade deadline back a week or 2, and we're getting deals. We got Robbie Anderson to the Cardinals, Christian McCaffrey to the Niners, James Robinson to the Jets, Robert Quinn to the Eagles, Kadarius Toney to the Chiefs, Roquan Smith to the Ravens, Hawkinson to the Vikings, Chase Claypool, the 3rd best receiver in the NFL per Chase Claypool, to the Chicago Bears, Bradley Chubb to the Dolphins, and now the Dolphins are looking to extend Chubb. Giggity. Calvin Ridley to the Jaguars on a crazy trade that has so many little pieces to it.
It does. Nobody even knows what that trade is right now.
I actually have it written down just to be sure on it. And then Naheem Hines to the Bills was another big one. So getting into some of these trades, we'll talk about them in a second, but let's get that Calvin Ridley trade off the board. Here are the conditions. It's a 2024 4th rounder that's going from the Jags to the Falcons. It stays as a 4 if Calvin Ridley is just on the roster. If it goes to a 3, it's because Ridley reached certain incentives. What those incentives are, there's where we're unsure. However, it can become a 2nd round pick if Ridley decides to sign an extension with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, people forget how good Calvin Ridley is. This is Josh Allen getting Stephon Diggs for Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence, though, running out of time to really start showing us a little something. Because right now, when you look at that 2021 draft, those quarterbacks, we don't know who the best one is right now or who's really worth it. We'll talk about that in a little bit because I just saw something pop up from David Carr. But let's get into the trade deadline. Who won the trade deadline in your opinion?
Baltimore.
Baltimore?
Yeah.
Roquan?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and I mean, that's top 3 linebacker in football, in my opinion. So that's a huge get for them. And essentially, I mean, what they got him for, what was it, a first and a.
It's a second and a fifth and AJ Klein.
Okay. So yeah, a second round pick. That's a big move. Of course, the Bradley Chubb move's a big move. The interesting one that I think might be low key underrated is the Kadarius Toney trade to get to Kansas City, just because what he can do, and we saw at Florida, and it's just kind of, let's be honest, the Giants haven't been a great situation for him. But for him to be able to get a quarterback that can give him the ball, get him in space, that could be an interesting one. But I think Roquan Smith is the best player that was traded on the trade deadline day, followed by Bradley Chubb. And listen, look at what the Dolphins have done with the Trey Lance trade on draft night, adding all pro talent.
Yep, they added Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and now Bradley Chubb with those 3 first-round picks they acquired in the Trey Lance 49ers trade. Now, that deal you talked about with Roquan Smith going to the Ravens, they gave up a second-round pick, which will most likely be, mid to late second round. The thing is, if they lose Roquan Smith, who's a free agent at the end of the year, they're going to gain a third-round compensatory pick, most likely.
Yep.
So you're really, you're giving up 1 round of draft stock, for a guy who you might resign, but for the last 8 games of your season can make a difference. He can step in immediately on Monday Night Football.
How important that position is in the AFC North, right? Like, that position is so crucial when you talk about that division and what they're wanting to do. And I think them adding Roquan Smith makes them scary defensively, and they just got to be decent offensively. They've had problems in the fourth quarter. Lamar Jackson's had problems in the fourth quarter. But hey, you got to score less points. That's beneficial to the offense.
Yeah, absolutely. It allows Patrick Queen to do more of what he's best at, which is kind of be a rover and move around. And you're absolutely right with that division where you see Browns defense, who a lot of people thought was going to be really good this year. I wasn't one of them. Once Anthony Walker went down, that team struggled. Now Deion Jones has taken over. They've started to play a little better. Logan Wilson has been a mainstay for the Cincinnati Bengals, Devin Bush, and you can go linebacker after linebacker after linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the Steelers is a team that I thought did a pretty good job. They added William Jackson, who played under Tyrell Austin in Cincinnati, and he's got an extension. And you get a second-round pick for a guy who you were basically putting on the back burner for George Pickens, who you brought in. And a second-round pick and adding a starting corner for a team that really needs to figure themselves out, that's a pretty solid move.
Chase Claypool stinks.
Chase Claypool is perfect
George
for
Pickens
what the Bears want to do.
Chase Claypool right now.
He has been. And I think the Steelers believe that right now as well. Now, the problem with George Pickens was never on the field. We'll see if he can really keep his head clean from all the other BS that he falls in line with. The Bradley Chubb thing, the 100%, that's a great deal for them. Because after the first 2 games where they were really getting after the quarterback, they're down to like 14%.
Yeah, their pass rush has been terrible.
I mean, their pass rush is terrible. 14% success rate in a league where you have to face Mahomes if you want to win, Josh Allen if you want to win anything. And this offense has shown they can do things when Tua is in and no one's hitting him and knocking him into the dirt. Now, the crazy thing is all these trades, this is a lot of fun. Do you think they should push back the trade deadline maybe 1 or 2 more weeks to maybe give us more fun? Or is this just perfect where it is? Because now you give guys time to really acquiesce themselves as part of a roster.
I do like, but I kind of like a week 10 trade deadline. That's just kind of where I'm at with it. I mean, I think it's fair to have it in week 8 or week 9, whatever way you want to look at it. Because I feel like you kind of know who your team is at this point. But again, when we're talking about 17 games, things can happen in these next 2 games that teams are just going to have to go out and make a move if they're a contending team, to where now you have 9 games left and you have a guy go down and you really have no ability to go out and get another guy. It's kind of a little difficult, but again, you kind of know who you are at this point. But again, 2 more weeks in the NFL can be a big difference.
Were you surprised that Brandon Cooks and Cam Akers remained on the teams they're with?
Yes. Yeah. I think Brandon Cooks has always been a really interesting player and a real big threat. And And I think Cam Akers just needed a change of scenery, right? Clearly, shit hit the fan there. It sounds like his attitude's not ideal. Because we saw the back half of last year, Cam Akers looked like the bona fide guy there.
Mm-hmm.
And now this year, he can't even get on the field. When he's on the field, he doesn't block for shit. He literally just stands like a statue and lets Stafford get hit. His yards per carry when he did play weren't very good. So a change of scenery would have been nice for him. So I'm surprised both those players didn't get moved. Look, Brandon Cooks, Aaron Rodgers. Like the Packers have got to be the most frustrating team. Like clearly there were wide receivers on the market available.
Mm-hmm.
Do I think that Chase Claypool was worth a 2? No. Do I think that the Steelers organization heard that the Bears would offer him a 2 and they were like, okay, you probably could add him for a 3 or a 4?
And they probably could have, but they knew that if this is a guy you want, you got to overpay. And that second round pick ended up being the Ravens' second round pick, not the Bears' second round pick. So it was lower than.
But yeah, you would have thought that the Packers would have done something, right? And they're so reliant on it's old Randall Cobb and a bunch of young pups, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Bobby Tonyan, who's kind of a young pup.
It's
so you're relying on essentially rookie wide receivers and Randall Cobb, who's in his 30s, I believe.
If he's not, he should be. I feel like he's been around forever.
Yeah, he's been around since the Bush administration. But no, so that's to me. If I'm a Packers fan, I'm like, when's enough? We just been asking you to draft a guy, pick a buy up in free agency, trade for somebody, and they just don't. I don't understand organizationally what they think that's doing. And let's not act like Aaron Rodgers is the peak of his career, right? His days are dwindling down. Not everybody's playing to 45 like Tom Brady. So you can't go out there and spend some assets to try to, give him a weapon. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't seem like they're very interested in winning, if I'm being honest about it.
My question is, what is their plan going forward for 23, 24? Like, are they just counting on these guys? Are they counting on these guys developing that much and Rodgers just not aging over the next 2 years? And are they going to eventually have to keep Jordan Love because this rookie deal is getting to the end and they're going to have to make decisions on him? It's hard to say what the Packers are doing.
There's lots more issues than just the offense on that team. That team's not a good team right now.
Their defense has been solid for the most part, but if you look at it, that's where all their draft capital is gone. There's like first and second round picks have taken 3,000 snaps this year.
Well, they haven't been able to run the ball consistently at all.
Because they keep giving the ball to A.J. Dillon when their best weapon is Aaron Jones. I mean, come on now.
Yeah. So and again, when you can't run it and you have third and longs and you got 19-year-olds playing wide out, it's a tough scene out there.
Just getting kids out of the local Green Bay high school.
Yeah, seriously.
Like, hey, can you do things? Like, we had a kid this week, Torre, who really hadn't got a lot of run, but Christian Watson comes on the field, and this kid's like on the field, hurt, off the field. On the field, hurt, back off the field every time he gets in. So Torre comes in.
Chemistry with your quarterback when you just can't be on the field.
Exactly, as a young pup. And this kid does something that none of the other receivers did, where he broke off his route and actually ran to an open spot, and Rodgers is like, hey, hit him. And then Collinsworth on Sunday Night Football is talking about Devontae Adams does this. Devontae Adams does this. This is what Devontae did. We got to chill.
But that's a slippery slope, though, too, because young players don't have the freelance opportunities to just break off routes. Because what happens when he breaks off a route and Rodgers throws a pick?
Yep.
Then it's
Rodgers
a shit
sees
show.
It different. He's going to lose his mind.
Right. And that's the thing. You don't want your guys like break it. And that's why letting Devontae Adams walk is wild to me. Who's coming off, 0 catches last week? 1 catch, maybe?
We're going to talk about the Raiders here in a little bit because we're going to talk mid-season surprises and disappointments. I'm pretty sure they're kind of both of those. But let's talk Dan Snyder. Dan Snyder, the owner of the Washington Commanders, the Commandeers, the Commanders.
The football team.
The football team. He once said, I will never change the name. He did. He once said, I will never sell the team. Now it looks like he's interested. He's spoken to Bank of America about starting to look for buyers for this team.
What's that process look like when you're selling a multi-billion-dollar corporation? Do I just call Key Bank like, hey, it's Drew, thinking about selling this huge asset. Can you put me through to the teller Ryan to see if he can help me out? Like, I don't even like. What do? You got to meet with the executive. I don't know. It just seems wild that it was like the first move was contacting a bank.
Yeah. I feel like if you're gonna sell the team, there's gonna be a billionaire who's like, hey, I'll take him.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Oh, because the NFL is all you do is make money as an owner, essentially.
I mean, you're good. And if you're Dan Snyder, you're apparently doing some really sketchy things to keep making more money. Because later on this evening, we found out that he's getting looked into for some shady dealings that he may be.
He's got to be pissed. The IRS hired 84,000.
84,000 people, 83,000 of which were all sent from the NFL and Jerry Jones and Jim Irsay to dig into Dan Snyder. But Dan Snyder, this guy who just keeps running his mouth about, I've got dirt on this person, this person, this person. Eventually, this dude, it all karma caught up to him. I mean, he's eventually going to have to sell. And I'm going to say this now, and by this time next year, he's going to somehow be scot-free and still the owner. But Dan Snyder's just a creep, and that's all I got to say.
What do you think? What do you think the chances are of him trying to flex and say he's got shit on different owners? Do you think there's a chance owners are kind of like, hey, look into this over there up in the nation's capital? You know what I mean? Because it's like, you fucking piss off other billionaires. Billionaires have connections.
Yeah. They know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody.
So if I'm Jerry Jones and you're talking shit about me, I'm going to call up Fernando over there in the IRS that I know and say, hey, here's what's going on. It's like, I could definitely see something like that happening, because last time we've heard from Dan Snyder was, we have dirt on the league and we could bring the league to its knees. And it's like, looks like you're the one on your knees.
I mean, we're
Mr.
still missing
Snyder.
All the emails outside of the ones they got Gruden fired for.
Yeah, poor Gruden's like
NFL is obviously doing something sketchy. But yeah, absolutely. And Jim Irsay, Jim Irsay's probably like, listen, boys, I'm coming over here when he's talking to his old pill dealers, sending little
let's not act like Jim Irsay.
Place.
I love Jim Irsay as an owner, by the way. But he essentially got caught with like narcotics out the ass in his car driving drunk. So let's not act like Jim Irsay is great either.
No,
but like that's
none of these guys are.
You pay. I mean, dude, I remember he had like a whole pharmacy of drugs in his car.
And how'd it disappear? Oh wait, he's a billionaire. He owns a Colts.
Right. Nobody remembers that.
Cleveland Browns, Jimmy Haslam, ripping off truckers nonstop. All of a sudden, they're like, oh no, FBI is raiding his house. They're doing all kinds of stuff, and all of a sudden that's gone.
Would you say it's fair or unfair to say that you kind of have to be some level of a scumbag to be a billionaire?
Oh, it's definitely fair.
Okay.
Because in order to get that amount of money, at some point you have to step on someone's throat.
Right. You gotta fire the lady who's 9 months pregnant and has 2 kids and leave her out in the streets. And you gotta piss all these people off.
$18,000 you can put somewhere else, and then all of a sudden that takes off. I mean,
yeah,
absolutely. To be a billionaire, you have to be a douchebag at some point. Maybe not to the extent of some of these guys, but you've got to do some sketchy shit. And before we get too deep into this and I'm just going to move on. I'm not even going to go into that. NFL midseason surprises and disappointments to kind of keep the show on a even keel here. Drew, who's surprised you the most so far early in the season, midway or whatever it is?
Outside of the Lions, I guess, because I thought they would be okay. Definitely the Colts situation surprises me quite a bit. The Denver situation is very surprising as well. I would say my most shocking thing is the way Denver's looked, because they look lost. And they're now, don't get me wrong, everybody's going to say they won in London. Well, that was not pretty. It was
Trevor
against
Lawrence
Jacksonville.
threw a ball directly to a man 3 feet in front of him at the 1 yard line. Otherwise, they don't win that game.
So to me, those got to be like the biggest disappointments. And then the team that we, of course, I picked to win the division, which is the Oakland or the Vegas Raiders. They just have been bad. And it's like, I don't know, man. Does Josh McDaniels just kind of suck? Is he just kind of like all hype? Is he all gas, no brakes, like just out of control? I think that's kind of the way
Bisaccia took a team that was in turmoil. They had lost their head coach. Their best wide receiver killed someone. Their first round corner was out shooting guns. And Bisaccia took that team, put it back together, and ended up getting that team to the playoffs. And then they're like, we're going to let you go. Now he's coaching special teams in Green Bay.
Yeah, to a guy like Josh McDaniels who like essentially took the Colts job and then like in the middle of the night decided he's not going to take it. The Raiders should be way better than they are, dude. And that's just the way I'll put it because there's talent there. Like Josh Jacobs has been really fucking good, and they still stink.
And they keep going away from him.
Darren Waller is either a dead person. I watch their games, even when he's playing, it's like, is he even out there? Like, there's weird stuff going on there. Clearly, there's a disconnect between Josh McDaniels and Darren Waller because we've kind of know what Darren Waller is, which is a stud, a bona fide tight end. And we just haven't seen any of it this year. He's been a complete disappointment.
No, we haven't seen anything good come out of those teams. And it's sad that our surprises are also all our disappointments. You look at the Colts, who we thought were going to be good, the Raiders, the fact that the Broncos have been a mess and there's 3-5 somehow, and they've been terrible. You look at what we thought the AFC West was going to be, and it's really just, hey, the Chargers aren't doing very good right now either. It's basically the Chiefs running away with it. But as a good surprise, look at what the NFC East has been.
I agree with that.
All the teams are 4-4 or above, and the Commanders finally are looking good because they finally benched, because of injury, technically, Carson Wentz, who should never start another game for that team as long as Taylor Heineke's healthy, because Heineke's got that team to actually look good and be able to use all their weapons. Also, stop forcing Brian Robinson. Antonio Gibson was pretty solid. You can still use him every now and then. I don't care if he fumbles.
We know he got shot, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't
By a 17-year-old who was caught
every
today.
time.
But so much forcing. As far as other teams, surprised the Bengals have been up and down as much as they are, but I mean, I do understand that Burrow did have the appendectomy, and once they got things going, Seahawks, absolutely. Geno Smith, huge surprise. Geno looks for real, like a team just trusting him. He's playing with house money.
But there's something about just being able to go out there and sling it and not have to worry about, like, I feel like when you're a quarterback who was a starter for a significant period of time, and then you've been a kind of a backup ever since, when you get back out there, you're like fucking freewheeling, dude. What do I got to lose?
I'm not giving up anything.
You don't play scared. You don't do the turtle head thing where you pop back in your shell.
And Geno's not only just slinging it, he has thrown absolute dimes. He hit Tyler Lockett on a ball that Lockett dropped, which is unbelievable that he dropped. Just perfectly placed could not have walked that ball up and placed it in his hand any better than what Geno did. And Geno just doing it. And that defense, and now people, Tyler Lockett came out after that game and said, it's amazing what happens when we're all just playing together and not looking for one guy to get credit. People are taking it as a Russ slam. I don't think it is. Russ and Tyler Lockett are tight, allegedly. But the Seahawks, absolutely. What they've done to be credit to Pete Carroll. Credit to Pete Carroll, credit to the defense, what that they've done.
There was a cool play last week, too, when Lockett dropped that touchdown. Because Pete Carroll went over to him and kind of gave him the old hand on the shoulder, and then Lockett comes out and catches a bomb on the next possession. So that's just, listen, Pete Carroll's a good coach, man. He's been doing this a long time, and we thought this team was going to be shit. We thought they were the worst team in the league, and they are not.
Absolutely.
That team resides in Detroit, Michigan.
Sadly, it's the way it looks right now. But still, if I was to put together 5 coaches to fire, your head coach would not make that list. And I will have that another time. I do have 5 guys who I would like to fire, and maybe I'll use that. Drew, you want to go on a 2-minute rant here? You got anything you want to rant about?
Just the Matt Ryan thing in general.
Go ahead.
Just think, I don't know what Indianapolis is doing. You literally went out. You decided Carson Wentz wasn't the guy after 1 year. You bring in Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan plays 5 games or 6 games. Okay. It's up and down. He's throwing for a lot of passing yards. He hasn't been great. And then and I know that his shoulder's dinged up, but then you say we're going to Sam Ehlinger, and then to find out that they don't plan on Matt Ryan playing another possession in Indianapolis, it's like, what are we doing here? So if are we just giving up on the season? Because nobody can sit here and tell me that Matt Ryan isn't better than Sam Ehlinger. Matt Ryan still has some in the tank. And I just think it's so weird. I know there's incentive based. I know that Indianapolis without playing him is going to save a bunch of money. It just seems like ticky-tack bullshit to me. And for them to not move him at the deadline, for him to have to sit there and go through this bullshit at his age, potential Hall of Famer, it's silly. It's silly to me. And I don't know what Frank Reich's doing. I don't know what Chris Ballard's doing. This is an organization that I've actually thought have done some of the better moves in the league over the past, 5 or 6 years. And then for them to do this, it just seems weird. It's like, and the locker room knows that Matt Ryan gives them the best chance to win. You're not pulling that bullshit over on the locker room, guys. So is this a draft pick thing? Is this not wanting to pay the incentive thing? What is this? It just seems fishy now. Like,
couldn't have said any better myself. That's where I was going to go with my rant, but I got another rant lined up here.
Okay, sorry.
But it's perfect because when you look at that team, for the same reasons you said, I thought this was a team that had their shit together as a franchise. Because you and I always talk about what shit shows our franchises are and how we're used to them doing stupid things. But you move to Sam Ehlinger, to continue on your point, I haven't even hit my rant yet. You move to Sam Ehlinger, and then the next day you fire the offensive coordinator. You're not helping anyone here. And if you're really throwing in the towel and you're just tanking it, obviously what that team is missing right now is, if you remember correctly, when the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl, a lot of people gave credit to Frank Reich for what he was doing and said, oh, he was the guy behind Doug Peterson who really helped, and that's why Peterson looked terrible after he left. Well, look at what Nick Sirianni's doing in Philadelphia, and now what Frank Reich is doing. Maybe Frank Reich was the guy behind the guy behind the guy the whole time, because Sirianni looks like he knows
3-4-1, dude. They're 3-4-1. They're not dead.
And they're probably in the worst division in football.
Like what? Like they're not dead. Like the Lions are fucking dead. Their 3-4-1's not dead. Like, okay, so Sam Ehlinger, that. And then to your point, we're going to have this young quarterback come out. We're going to fire your OC. Next week, okay, let's see how it goes next week. I'm sure Sam Ehlinger is going to look great.
100%.
Setting him up for failure.
I mean, that's exactly what they're doing. And maybe they're tanking because they know they got to get a quarterback that's not a year-to-year guy. But
you got a lot of losses to come. Your team's that team. That's the thing about the NFL is you can tank, but the players aren't tanking. They're going to want to win. And that roster's got good enough talent to win games that you don't want them to win. So have fun.
Now, for me, for my 2-minute rant.
Good quarterback. You get Will Levis, you fucking idiots. Get Will Levis.
They're going to end up with Hendon Hooker. I'm telling you, Hendon Hooker just fits what that team is right now. But for my 2-minute rant, it's because, I talk to a lot of people about football, and I try to stay even keel for the most part. And I try to see things for maybe the bigger picture than what they just are. And we were talking about head coaches getting fired and how one of my guys would not be your team's head coach, Dan Campbell. Now, Dan Campbell right now looks absolutely lost at points during the game. They're not making adjustments. However, what you need to do in a lot of these situations, this will include my team, the Cleveland Browns, who always want to fire head coaches. All the fans want to do that. Kevin Stefanski, this guy's getting to at least next year because you do not bring in Deshaun Watson, having him work with him, and then only giving him 6 games. So when you look at a lot of these teams, you need to start keeping your head coaches for longer than 2 years, longer than 1 year. Because if you ever want to be good, you have to build some kind of continuity. You have to look further into the organization to find if they're actually building culture. For the Detroit Lions, I think what Brad Holmes especially has done is bring in players who can fit any kind of scheme they want, anything they want to do. He's brought in really good football players. For Dan Campbell, I think he's trying to build a culture of toughness there, where no matter who comes in, no matter the situation, this is who we are, this is what we're going to try to do. Is it working right now? No. The team's winning 1 game, but they're battling every game. We said the same thing about them last year. They're building a culture. Let teams work. Let guys build a culture and then go forward. You see what teams do, like Belichick's been there in New England. You know what you're doing. Tomlin and every Steelers head coach, Tomlin, Cowher, Chuck Noll, over 50 years, the only guys, you know what Steelers football is. Start building culture so you know what a team can be forward. It's the best way to shine. However, with that being said, I would still fire Nathaniel Hackett after 1 year. But that's because there's no culture there right now.
I agree. And trust me, because our teams have done it. The thing that you worry about, if you're a Lions fan, the argument you make is, do I want Campbell and Holmes drafting the future quarterback next year? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. My only concern with Dan Campbell is the fact is they lose tons of close games because he's a fucking imbecile in game. He has no idea what he's doing. When they give the meathead mentality, the dude seems like just an absolute meathead. Doesn't know how to call timeouts, just decides to go for every 4th down. You play a team, you have the ball inside their 57 times, you score 0 points. That's dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love the Dan Campbell, rah, man. I love that. But
he does love to say man.
He loves to say man. And it's like, okay, that's fine. So, like, I love the guy. I really like Dan Campbell. But it's like, okay, that. And the other problem I have is I don't think he has the balls to fire Aaron Glenn right now. And I think Aaron Glenn deserves to be fired.
Mm-hmm.
They're boys. So do you have the balls to fire Aaron Glenn? The other cop-out I think this organization made yesterday, and I thought they would blow it up more, but I think trading Hawkinson kind of gives them, these guys, at least another year or two, right? And I'm okay with it. I'm not saying I want to turn it around, but I'm saying that these are concerns of a Lions fan.
Yeah.
And I get them. But Brad Holmes has done a nice job of finding talent later in the draft. But we're so brainwashed as Browns and Lions fans thinking that's super uncommon. Good fucking GMs do that all the time. Mm-hmm. It's just ours that don't. So it's like, do I need to bake him a cake? Do I need to give him a cookie because he does?
Guys can't find good players in the first round.
It's like, it's exactly. So it's like, those are like but yeah, you can't blow it up over and over and over, because what happens is you get guys in and they want to get rid of the old regime's guys, and they want to bring in their new guys, but they're fired within 2 years. And then the next regime wants to do the same thing. And it's like, there needs to be some continuity across the board when it comes to the front office and the head coach. So as frustrated as I am, I mean, I'm not even really that frustrated, to be honest. It's just like what it's life at this point.
Dan Campbell just needs to show that he's learning from his mistakes.
He does. And
I think Aaron Glenn does get fired at the end of the year.
He needs to be fired yesterday.
I think they're just trying to get
the firing of Aubrey Pleasant, the DB's coach, is such a bitch cop-out, in my opinion.
He was a scapegoat.
And it's just not, it's ridiculous. So again, this isn't Lions talk, but I agree that you can't, and it's not just a Lions thing, you can't do it across the league. Now, if you have the Nathaniel Hackett situation, you know that
or Josh
it's not going to work. Even. It's different, but you know that Dan Campbell still has his pulse on that locker room.
If you see a team that is trying out there, as opposed to a team who just looks completely lost, or a team that's outmatched talent-wise at times, they're all different scenarios. I think at times the Lions, even though they've rebuilt a lot, they were coming up from nothing because that previous regime left them with just garbage and Patriots players. But for what the expectations and the roster that Nathaniel had going into Denver and what Josh McDaniels has going into, Las Vegas, those teams are too good to be this bad.
Correct. I agree.
That's all there is to it. All right, let's get into our game of the week, which is Georgia at Tennessee, a 3:30 kickoff on CBS. Actually, this is in Georgia. My bad. I'm reading it backwards because I don't know how to read, apparently.
It's tough.
Reading is hard. Let me fix that real quick. Either way, Georgia, number 1 team AP all year, and now they're the number 3 team based on the college football playoff rankings. They come in as the defending national champion against the darling of college football right now, which is really Tennessee, because everyone's like, hey, we talked about at the beginning of the year, this was a 3-team race, Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia. Now Tennessee's like, hey, baby, we here, and we ain't going anywhere. We're pretty damn good. Now, Josh Heupel has done an amazing job so far at Tennessee. Not too great last year, but he showed that he was building something, and now they're 8-0 this year on a big 8-game winning streak. Dominated Kentucky last week, 44-6. Florida got stomped by Georgia, 42-20. These two teams, really, really good. Georgia's good enough that along with Michigan and Alabama and Ohio State, there are only 4 schools that are ranked in the top 10 nationally in scoring offense and defense. But for everything that Georgia does, as good as they are, they score 41 points a game, they're only giving up 10. They have not met an offense who is this good and this balanced in what Tennessee can do. Drew, this is going to be a super fun game in the middle of a Saturday that probably both of us will be doing dad things and not get to see the whole thing. And it's going to suck.
About college football, man.
But who you like in this game and why?
I like Georgia. Now, in theory, I'd love Tennessee win. Tennessee's more battle proven as of this year. The Alabama game, they've played a tougher schedule up to now, but I just think Georgia is the more mature team. They are playing with essentially a lot of the roster they had last year, outside of some defensive players. They know how to win. This is in Georgia. Tennessee's the sweetheart of the league, but you love when you play a team like Georgia, you're not going to blow them out. This isn't going to be the Bama Tennessee game where Bama, it was 40 something to 40. So it's just, you're not going to see that kind of game. And I want to see Tennessee win a game like this, right? I want to see them win a 17 to 14 game. And if they do, it'd be great. I want them to win, but I do like Georgia here. And Stetson Bennett, the 44-year-old.
Stetson Bennett just goes out there and he just wins. He's almost like Craig Krenzel was for the Buckeyes back in the day, where you're not getting anything fancy out of him. He just does what the team needs. And he's got playmakers all around him, and he allows that. And that defense is just, they lost so many great players. Everyone is, they're going to lose so many guys. 8 first-round, second-round picks.
Reset button.
And they're just like, no, we're filling them up. Yep. But for Tennessee, what Tennessee's doing on offense is they're literally getting everyone involved. You saw Cooper May have a great game not that long ago. This kid, Princeton Fant, who one second he's lined up at wideout, next second he's a tight end, then he's a fullback. They're moving him around and getting the ball in the hands of their playmakers. And that's what's making it hard to stop them. Now, if this game is 17 to 14, this is definitely a Georgia win, in my opinion. If this gets into the mid-20s and it gets into a shootout, and we see that Tennessee can do something early against that Georgia defense, I think it's a Tennessee win. Now, Tennessee is going in to Athens on a big game where they're going to be at halftime. They're recognizing Champ Bailey, one of the best players in Georgia history. And I think that is going to play into what these kids really want to do. You know, when they're bringing in a big name and they got a big thing happening at halftime, some of these kids get really pumped up. Now, will they get pumped up good, or are they going to get overly pumped up to show off and it's going to hurt them? We'll find out. I think that always does play a part in some of these college games, depending on who they got in visiting. But for me, I'm going to lean Tennessee. Why not?
I love it, dude. Again, I want Tennessee to win this game.
I think it's going to be a super fun game, and I'm bummed that I'm probably going to miss it. Whoo, baby.
It's tough because it's tough.
You at a strip club now, bud?
We've transitioned to the strip club.
All right. I'm making sure I'm seeing things right as I turn around.
So it's tough because, I go back and watch a lot of the college games during the week just because I don't, to your point, with kids and it's like I have to choose my 7 hours of commercial-free football on Sunday or watch football on Saturday. So I watch a lot of football on my phone and then just take my Sundays. I can't, my wife isn't going to let me do both days all day. Stuff scene.
I mean, it's a fact of the matter. And we would love to sit here and lie about it and say we watch every game 100%, but we don't. We ain't going to lie about it. That's the whole way we've ever done this show is we're going to be as real as possible. And I know that even if I'm home and trying to watch the games, that my kids are going to need, it's never going to work out.
They need to eat. They need to, it doesn't.
Do you want to do this? Or they're going to, hey, look at this new app on my phone. If I hold the button here, it spins everything. I'm like, who the fuck cares? But that's fantastic. But I love it. So that is pick number 1. We'll get into our full game picks here. We're tied 52-34 so far this year. But before we move on to that, let's talk about the Thursday night game. I don't even know if we need to pick this one. I don't think we should, because I'm pretty sure we're both going to pick the same team. However, 2 of us have been really big into the DraftKings Thursday night single game with the captain in the showdown mode. And our matchup we picked a few weeks ago when we were here, we actually cashed in on, if I remember correctly. And that was the Bears and... What was that game? It was the Bears and someone, I want to say.
It was the Bears New Orleans.
Okay, it was Bears New Orleans, and we did cash in on that lineup. Sounds good to me. I can't remember it. It was 3 weeks ago, and I just flipped the page on all my notes. So not being here the past couple weeks kind of threw that off. Anyway, let's pick a good matchup for our DraftKings lineup. Follow along. You can remember this. Fill in your lineup as we go. Drew, who are you putting in at captain?
Yeah, I was going to pull it up on my... This is... You don't know what's something that's annoying about life? Is I never remember my passwords to anything. So when I'm trying to pull up online, on my phone, it just automatically signs me in. Yeah. And so I was going to do a screen share, but I didn't because I don't know my password. So I'm pulling up. So for me, personally, this is the AJ Brown slot.
Okay.
What do you think?
I'm going to go with that. I'm going to see how we got. We got 33,200 remaining because AJ Brown in the captain slot is a $16,800 move. Now, if I'm looking at the rest of this game, I'm thinking I need to stay away from Houston Texans players because Brandon Cook's probably not playing. Nico Collins out. Davis Mills, who's been a solid quarterback, he's not going to get a lot of help. Dameon Pierce, even with Jordan Davis out for the Eagles, he is going to struggle. So at this point, I would throw in the Eagles defense.
You know what's funny? When's the last time you saw a defense that cost $7,000? You know what I mean?
It is insane to think about that. But it's a team that has been great defensively. They've stopped everyone. They have not allowed a receiver over 70 yards all season. And now you're down to basically who you got left. I mean, you got Chris Moore. I mean, who you're going to look at Rex Burkhead out of the backfield? It's not a good look right now to be the Houston Texans. Who you like next as a pick?
I think you just go with the guns and you just double up. You take Jalen Hurts. I know it's expensive. I know it doesn't leave you a lot, but I think this is where, and you and I both agree, kickers are super beneficial in these DFS lineups, especially if you do the ones I do, which are basically just double ups where you just got to be in the top 50. Yep. I play at least 1 to 2 kickers in every single lineup I do.
So let's say we put in Jalen Hurts, we put in both kickers, we got the Eagles defense and AJ Brown. That leaves us $5,800. Where are you going with this? $5,800.
Let's take a look.
Are we looking at a Chris Moore because he's the only guy out there and eventually they're going to have to throw the football? Are we thinking Dorsett does something for the first time? Burkhead, is he going to be a guy out of the backfield? We already know Nico's not playing.
I think Moore's the play.
More is the play?
I think so.
All right. So we go with that. We're left with $400, and that's AJ Brown and the captain. Eagles defense and special teams, both kickers, Jalen Hurts and Chris Moore. $400 remaining. I'm going to go ahead and put that in, and that'll be on my 2K dime package here. 7.5K winnings. You can win up to $7,000. Highly doubt you will, but hey, why not? And remember, check out our boy Chris at Detroit BC for bottom of the barrel stuff. For any other DFS stuff you do, you can get the bottom of the barrel stuff. Now, I like that lineup. Tomorrow, right before the game, they always open up some free games. So if you don't want to put any money in, there's free games on DraftKings all the time where you can just throw in players and just try to learn it. I mean, I do 10-cent games. Drew's spending $2 on the double ups. I did a $2 one last week and won a $15 NFL ticket to the $1 million contest. Now, I've had two really good weeks lately, and it's just fun. It brings something in because most of these games, especially this game most likely, they're not very good games. So it brings a little extra je ne sais quoi.
Exactly. No, it's fun, man. It's and again, you can do it low stakes, responsibly, have a good time. Like, I think at the end of the year, you can get up $50, $75 just doing a little small bullshit, and that pays for a fantasy league, right? Gets you in a fantasy league. And
I tell you all the time, I do the 10-cent, 25-cent games. I started with $5. Let me see my account right now. $20.67. And I've won back-to-back weeks of $15 NFL ticket for the $1 million contest. So you put in 10 cents, you win a $15 ticket, you got a chance at $1 million. It's better than a Powerball ticket, which 1 million people are buying tonight. Did you end up buying a ticket?
No,
neither did I.
Nope. So
we talked about it earlier, and I knew both of us wouldn't buy a ticket.
Yeah.
There's still time.
I got hit in the freaking eye with a rock. Yeah, I had to pivot off of that idea.
And I ate an edible and decided to eat Kentucky Fried Chicken for dinner.
There you go. I mean, listen.
Ate an edible while waiting for the girls to get off the bus, sitting there in the car. And all of a sudden, I'm like, you know what? Kentucky Fried Chicken sounds really good. And we had dinner at like 4:15 in the afternoon because I made poor life decisions.
Problem is, anytime I get those little edibles, I can't stop eating.
Yeah.
I just eat all day. Now with the Halloween candy here, it's a very, very risky business for me.
I'm glad. This is one of the good times where it's good that my girls, go back and forth from my house to my ex-wife's house because the candy travels with them. Because if they left that candy here, good night, hello diabetic coma for Fat Boy over here. Let's get into some game picks. 52 and 34, both of us this year. We're not going to pick all the games because there's a lot of really bad games. A bunch of teams on bye. I think 13 NFL games this week. Let's pick this one, which this is a weird team. The Atlanta Falcons, 4-4, leading the NFC South. Just got lucky to win that game last week because PJ Walker threw an absolute dime to DJ Moore, and then DJ Moore ripped off his helmet and got called for a bullshit penalty, and Pinheiro missed the extra point, and then he missed a just a layup kick in overtime. Allowed the Falcons to go to 4-4. They are welcoming in Brandon Staley, who should be on the hot seat, and his Los Angeles Chargers at 4-3. Who you got in this one?
I'll give you the Chargers. I think Keenan Allen's back this week.
Keenan Allen may not be back this week because he said he hurt his hamstring training last week when he should have been resting it. He decided to train, and now he may have made it worse.
That dude always hurt.
So if you're playing DFS, Josh Palmer is a guy you really want to maybe put in your lineup because they're also without Mike Williams.
You mean the Chargers? Still, it's just they're the better team. It's the better.
I'm going with Chargers as well.
And I don't have much else to say. Marcus Mariota, they throw like 6 times a game. It's not ideal.
No, that's why you're looking at that team. They got 2 top 10 picks in Kyle Pitts and Drake London, and they're like, we're going to throw the ball 5 times.
Yep. I saw the stat line the other day. Mariota threw it 14 times. I'm like, okay, all right, it's not great.
I had to start Mariota in a pinch last week in fantasy, and dude put up 27 points somehow.
Just the first week ever.
I'm like, how lucky did we get? Mm-hmm. All right, next game, Miami Dolphins 5-3, who Drew thinks are a fraud, at the Chicago Bears, who Drew says suck usually. This is the Drew. You got to pick which team's really the worst team here.
The Bears.
Justin Fields playing better.
Yeah,
they finally realized, hey, if we use Justin Fields like, Lamar Jackson or some of these other running quarterbacks, and then we got him Chase Claypool, maybe something will happen. The Bears going to start doing things, or Dolphins go to 6-3?
Dolphins go to 6-3. Adding Chase Claypool is like getting, I don't know, like trading in the NBA for Rondo.
Hey, I had a great time having Rajon Rondo here. He did a pretty good job.
I mean, just
he's played for everybody, though. Yeah,
it's not ideal.
It's funny because we mentioned what they did in adding Bradley Chubb. A lesser move they made that I really liked was adding Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson, a super underrated back. And yesterday during our text, we were like, "Hey, some team should trade for him. I'd rather do this." And then 2 hours later, guys were getting traded. We were like calling trade after trade. And Jeff Wilson was one of the guys in our messages. We said we give up a 6th-round pick. They gave up 5th. And he can jump in right away because Mike McDaniels, he knows his offense. He knows what's up. I like this. I'm going to give it to the Dolphins. But I really do appreciate what the Bears are doing. And while we're talking Justin Fields and the Bears, I want to bring up what I was talking about earlier.
Wait, no. What do you mean you appreciate what the Bears are doing?
Finally using him properly.
Oh, okay. All right, you're talking about Justin Fields. Okay, yes. I got you.
So
I thought you were talking about you support trading a 2nd for Chase Claypool, which is an atrocious trade.
If they can make it work out, why not?
It's not going to work out.
I wouldn't give up a 2nd-round pick for him. I didn't think Chase Claypool was that good coming out, especially when people started comparing him to Megatron. But when you look at what they're doing,
what? People comparing him to Megatron?
Yeah, because of his size and his speed. You don't remember all that coming out? I'm like, no,
he's not that fast.
He ran like a 4.4. I mean, Megatron ran like a 3.9, though. Like, that dude was ridiculous, as you know. But anyway, David Carr, Derek Carr's brother and the former #1 pick of the Houston Texans, he, on NFL Total Access, came out and said if he was redrafting the 21 draft class, 8 quarterbacks went, this is how he would draft them. He said 2 of the players would be within the top 10 picks. And that would be Justin Fields and Davis Mills would be top 10 picks if you redrafted the 2021 draft. Trevor Lawrence would be a mid to late 1st rounder. Zach Wilson would be a late round 1. Trey Lance in the 2nd or 3rd round. Sam Ehlinger in the 3rd round. Mac Jones would go rounds 2 to 4. And Ian Book would be in rounds 5 to 6. Agree with any of that?
No.
Okay, either do I. I think it's Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson, as I keep going and talking about him, is like lower and lower in the best quarterbacks in his own division. The guy is not playing good in.
Trevor Lawrence is still the best in that class. I know it hasn't been great. Look at where he got drafted. Look at the situation. If we're going to literally sit here and say that Justin Fields is better than Trevor Lawrence, I don't know what we're doing here. We're
going based off 2 games where Justin Fields played really good football.
Now, David Carr is also the quarterback that got hit so many times. Let's all put that in perspective.
Blame it on the CTE.
My favorite commercials back in the day were like David Carr lined up, and it would just be a center and no other offensive linemen, and it would just be a whole defense. Like that's kind of how it was in Houston for him.
Drew, the Packers going to lose
important
in Detroit this week?
What's that?
Packers going to lose in Detroit this week?
Probably not. No, I would take the Packers.
All right, we won't get into that game. Vegas Raiders 2-5 at Jacksonville Jaguars 2-6. This game between two teams who I really feel like should be a little better than this, but the Jags at least have an excuse. Are the Raiders going to score points? Are they going to win this game? No. At TIAA Bank Field?
No, give me Jacksonville.
Give you the
Raiders
Jags.
The Raiders haven't won a home or away game all year long.
They're just god awful. I don't know what the hell's going on.
And Jacksonville's starting to figure out the running game. ETN's looked really good.
Yeah,
and again, don't get me wrong. Trevor Lawrence hasn't been good, right? Like I know that he hasn't been good. I'm not saying that he's the greatest quarterback, but he's at 800 or 1,850 yards. He's throwing 10 touchdowns. I think he's underrated, been sneaky good. And if they can run the ball, I like them. I like their chances. And I just, for whatever reason, the Raiders, man, they're just disappointing.
You know, we talked about the ridiculous amount of money they gave Christian Kirk, but Kirk's had a really good season. 35 catches, 500 yards, 4 catches. They've done good with him. They've used him. Well, you talked about ETN. He's averaging 6.2 yards a carry on 571 yards this season.
He's a rocket, dude.
And Josh Jacobs is averaging 5.6. He's having a great year, yet they keep going away from him because they like throwing the football. Josh Jacobs has 120 carries on the season. Derek Carr has attempted 247 passes. They need to figure that out a little more. But I'm going to take the Raiders here just because they got to do something. There's so much talent. Chandler Jones, Max Crosby. I mean, Devontae. It makes no sense. I don't even want to talk about that game. Buffalo Bills at New York Jets. Now, the Jets are 5-3, and people were saying, oh, they're the darlings of the NFL. They can win. They can be really good. Zach Wilson threw the worst interception I have ever seen, and that includes what Amari Cooper did on Monday Night Football.
2 of them, dude.
Yeah.
He threw the one where he scrambled and he about ran out of bounds, and he threw it back into the field of play to get picked off on the sideline. That one was atrocious. But then the other one, he basically did the same thing, but he just threw it further into the bounds and got picked off. So it was like, what? I don't understand. That guy he makes some throws that are just like,
he threw for like 360 yards last week, but it was awful. That's why people have to stop looking at numbers like that.
He looked terrible. Yeah, listen, give me the Bills.
Joe Flacco's the better quarterback on that team right now. And I understand they don't want to bench Zach Wilson. And I hate to say it, but it looks like our boy Daniel Kelly, NFL scout, who said he was a 3rd-round pick, he's looking a little more correct than our. God,
give me the Bills. It's tough to beat the Buffalo Bills right now. The spread at 12.5 seems aggressive for a team that plays as good a defense as the Jets do, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Minnesota Vikings 6-1, adding TJ Hawkinson at Washington Commanders 4-4. Commanders keep rolling, or do the Vikes move to 7-1?
I'll actually take the Commanders here. Again, they've been playing way better. I think the Vikings at 6-1. The Vikings have been really good on the road. You're trying to add in Hawkinson. I know it's not the biggest deal in the world, but I kind of like what the Commanders are doing. They're hanging around football games and then giving themselves a chance to win late. And that's all you got to do. It's not pretty. It's never going to be pretty with Washington, just because that's kind of the way that they're built. But I'll actually take the Commanders.
How about the fact that McLaurin had 113 yards last week? Curtis Samuel had 79 scrimmage yards. All of a sudden, their playmakers are getting the ball, and it's ever since Wentz disappeared.
Bro, I've been sitting on Terry McLaurin and playing him every single week, and it's been brutal. But Heineke actually throws it to Terry McLaurin, so I like that.
Heineke's just doing exactly what he did last year when he was getting them wins. He's just going out there and balling. Like, he's not going outside of who he is. He's just slinging the ball and having fun.
It's not flashy, but it's efficient.
Yeah, he's not a game manager. He's not a guy who's necessarily going to win you games, even though he kind of did it last week. But he's just doing
late throw to McLaurin at the 1 was that was a big time throw.
That was a 50-50 ball that he had 100% certainty in his mind and his arm.
Some quarterbacks just don't throw that ball, though, dude.
Yeah.
Some quarterbacks are not even willing to put the ball in the air and give me a guy that's willing to throw the 50-50 ball.
Listen, if a guy's willing to do that and make mistakes like that, I will take that over dink and dunk any day.
Absolutely. It keeps the
Seattle
defense honest, dude.
Yeah.
Keeps the defense honest.
And you need that. Seattle Seahawks 5-3 at Arizona Cardinals 3-5. This is at State Farm Stadium. Another guy who should be on the hot seat, and Cliff Kingsbury, good old Cliffy. Cardinals, they win this game, or does Geno keep the dream alive and go to 6-3?
Give me Geno. Get the Seahawks a better team right now. Cardinals are a mess. I mean, I know with Nuke back, Nuke looked good last week, and we know that when DeAndre Hopkins plays, he's top 5 receiver. I'm not going to sit here and argue. Anybody that wants to argue that, go right ahead. But he walked right back in, was efficient immediately. Yeah, but give me the Seahawks. I like the Seahawks doing. I do.
Cardinals, another team with so much talent with Watt, Simmons, Collins, Baker, Thompson.
I just saw how much of a fraud they were last year. They got out to like a 7 or 8-0 start, and then they just crumbled under the pressure.
And it is fitting that Kyler did lose last week after the new Call of Duty was released, which I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but there's a reason that clause was put in that contract originally. But I really do like what Seattle's doing, especially on defense. Tariq Woolen just looks like a young Richard Sherman right now. And I know it's early in his career, but kid is just balling out. Kobe Bryant doing a hell of a job as a rookie. They got 2 really good rookies. Last week, Mike Jackson was big for them. Nwosu, Brooks. That defense, I know we all talk about what that offense is doing, but that defense is looking like a young Legion of Boom style defense. They rebuilt it with young kids who are hungry, all playing well. And of course, we've talked Seahawks twice and not mentioned how good young Kenneth Walker has been stepping in for Rashad Penny, who's like, man, I wish I didn't get hurt because I lost myself a lot of money, even though I was playing good football.
I like Kenneth Walker a lot.
Yep.
I think, again, if you look back now and where Seattle sits and the assets they got from the Russ trade, I think Seattle feels really good about where they're at.
Seattle worry about drafting a quarterback next year. They just,
it's kind of like the Lions with Goff, and I think if you're at the top of the draft, you absolutely probably take that guy. But like Goff and Geno can sling it enough to win games while you build around it. Mm-hmm. But then it's like, how do you get your quarterback? I don't think that you go out of your way to draft quarterback, and I don't think they're not going to be in the position to draft the guy, right? And it's not, you don't just draft a quarterback to draft a quarterback. You know, it's not something you do. Everybody's like, oh, well, why don't the Lions with their second pick take a quarterback? Who the fuck do you want? Who do you want? So let's take a bum with the second pick instead of taking one of the, you know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. It's like, that's not the strategy. If you want to take a quarterback at 10, you don't take any quarterbacks. You just don't take a quarterback. Don't take a quarterback just to take one.
Yep. You hear that? Every single former Browns GM over the past 20 years.
It's just like, oh, we need
just
a quarterback.
Because Brandon Weeden's there, you don't take him. Just because Johnny Football's there, you don't take him. Brady Quinn.
Yeah, I get it, man. I mean, like, and for the Lions, we had Stafford for a decade, so I know it's a little different, but it still rings true. You don't just draft a guy, just draft a guy.
Nope. 2 teams that have been utterly disappointing. Los Angeles Rams 3-4. They traveled to Tampa to face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 2 teams who I don't even know what's going on with them these days.
They met in the NFC Championship last year,
and they just don't look very good.
Mm-hmm.
Who you got in this one? This is a Jim Nantz, Tony Romo, Tracy Wolfson game.
Give me Tampa. I say that I know Cup's dinged up. Tampa's been bad, let's be honest, but I like them to win this game. I also like the Rams to keep losing.
I'm going to take the Rams in this one, and for no other reason than I don't think either of these teams are good right now, and one of them has to win. I literally that's my analysis on it. Someone probably has to win, and after they tie 3-3, I'm going to feel like a horse's ass. God, that's just, these 2 teams looked so good last season and have just been absolute garbage. Our Sunday night game this week, Tennessee Titans 5-2. They are on a 4-game winning streak. They won last week because they played a bad team, and that was it, because Malik Willis did not look very good.
Well, Henry went for 2 bills.
Derrick Henry carried it, and they faced the Texans, which was
Have you seen, so like I was talking to my buddy, and we were talking about DFS, and I'm like, dude, the last 4 games against the Texans, Henry's averaged 180. I'm like, we just got to play him. And he went for 200. I mean, so,
100%.
some teams just own. I mean, some guys just own teams.
It was a 6 game of 200 yards or more for his career. There's a bunch of guys who have done it 4 times, and there's only one guy who's done it 5. Do you know that one guy who's done it 5 times is?
Barry Sanders?
It is Tiki Barber.
Interesting.
Didn't realize
Remember
he had that
the
many
Thunder and Lightning with Ron Dane and Tiki Barber?
Yep. And then later with Brandon Jacobs, who was 6'4", 260 back there.
Yeah.
The original King Henry.
Beef.
But yeah, we got Tennessee Titans, who we don't know Tannehill's status yet, traveling to KC to face the Chiefs. If Tannehill doesn't play in this, it's going to be
There's not enough firepower. It's just they can't score enough points.
I just don't see it. Tannehill, we rip on him at times because, if there's no running game, he seems to be lost. But at least he can manage the game someone to make some throws. But you look at this team right now, they're winning basically on run game and defense. And that's it, because you look at what they're getting out of wide receivers right now, and their wide receivers have less catches and less yards than A.J. Brown alone, who they traded away this offseason. They hang out with Kansas City at all, or is Kansas City just going to dominate this game?
I just think that they're going to score too much, and it's just they're not going to be able to run with Derrick Henry because they're going to be playing catch up. Especially if Malik Willis plays, he blows.
Yeah, he did not look good.
He's not good. He's not good.
But he was supposed to be a 10th round or 10th overall pick. He was supposed to be top 10.
But he can run like that. The league gets in this infatuation with like mobile quarterbacks, and then they realize, okay, 90% of these guys suck because they can't throw, and then they kind of come back this way. And it's like, yeah, you don't have. There's not a lot of Josh Allen. I mean, Josh Allen's the sneakiest runner of them all. Because he's so big he doesn't get hurt. But no,
fucking tank.
Yeah, so give me the Chiefs.
Our Monday night game this week: Baltimore Ravens 5-3 with Roquan Smith. New Orleans Saints, who looks like it's Andy Dalton's team, and they finally started using Alvin Kamara last week.
Is Jameis dead?
No, Jameis. I think Dennis Allen's thing is Jameis turns the ball over, and they're just trying to play it safe, maybe with Andy Dalton, who did kill them in the Arizona game. But
Andy Dalton's not going to lose games. Probably not going to win you games.
No,
but Jameis can lose you games for sure.
Oh, Jameis can lose you some games real quick.
Yeah.
I think Dennis Allen is just trying to play it safe with defense. And right now, Michael Thomas is really the missing guy here. We thought he was back, and he's been MIA for a few weeks.
Not surprising.
But
give me Baltimore.
Chris Olave's done pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think Baltimore's probably got a little bit too much for him. Good game by Kamara last week, but even on the road, I'll take Baltimore.
Ravens' offense has not been very well either. If Mark Andrews doesn't play, Isaiah Likely probably has a solid game again, but is there anyone you're worried about right now? Duvernay's had okay games. You're without Bateman again. Gus Edwards does really well and then gets hurt again.
Duvernay's their best receiver.
He is.
I mean, outside of Mark Andrews. I mean, Duvernay's been underrated. He's putting the ball in the end zone pretty much every game or every other game.
Mm-hmm.
And look, they're not going to throw it a lot. And they're going to throw a lot of short passes. It's a little dink and dunk. They just do a really good job of hiding the deficiencies of Lamar Jackson throwing the football, which people can say, oh, you're saying Lamar can't. I'm not saying Lamar can't throw. I'm just saying he can't just be a drop back pocket passer. That's just not who he is.
No. I want to take the Saints in this one. I really do. Just because I want the Ravens to lose. But I got to go with Baltimore on this. Like you said, they're just the better team right now. Let's get into Ward's wagers. Ward's wagers 43-23-2 last season. 115, 66-4 over the past 3, 2-1 last week, 10-10 now in 2022.
We're back to 500.
Who you like this week, bud?
I will take the Dolphins on the road -5. I just think that the Bears stink. I will actually take. See, this is a tough one here. I'm going to take the Jets, not to win the game, but to cover the 12.5. Excuse me. I'm going to take the Seahawks on the road +2. And then my final pick will be Baltimore on the road +2.5. So Baltimore on the road +2.5. Excuse me. Seahawks on the road +2. Jets to cover but not win +12.5. And then finally, I'll take the Dolphins -5 on the road in Chicago.
That Baltimore spread kind of
seems a little funky.
Throws me off.
It's a little funky, but Listen, I think that you give me the hook with the 2.5 and not the 3. Mm-hmm. It's very tempting for me.
I am tempted by that one. That one's pretty interesting. Let's go 4-0 this week. Let's get above 500.
Let's get after it.
Well, you got anything else you want to talk about tonight before we get out of here?
That's it, man.
You gotta go spend them dollar bills, y'all.
That's right.
That's right. I don't know how I forgot about that.
We'll update how the DFS did last week or next week, and we'll go from there. And then enjoy Thursday night football, folks.
Yeah, that is a 14-point spread right now.
14.
That is.
And if I had to pick a side, it would be the Eagles.
Ah, man, this is looking like a 34-3 kind of game. Yet, I'll be there watching it. I'll be sitting there watching it. Big night for Philadelphia because you got Game 4 of the World Series as well. It's going to be a fun night in Philly.
Yeah.
A lot of guys getting hammered.
Yes.
And while we're talking about that, credit to Reese Hoskins' wife for buying an entire section of booze. Bravo to you.
Tip of the cap to that move.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. All right. And with that, we are out. This has been episode 107 of the Full Coverage Football Show. Remember, as always, if you live the life you love, you love the life you live. Night, kids. And we wait for the circle.